Welcome to Conscious Insights, Strategies for Leadership Evolution. Engage in roundtable discussions that spark deep dialogue with executives and thought leaders to advance conscious leadership and explore innovative practices. Join us and gain insights that will elevate your leadership journey. Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Conscious Insights. Earlier this season, I have been talking a lot about different ways of shifting individuals and shifting systems. And then now I'm shifting over into showing and finding amazing people that are actually putting this into practice in systems. And so today I have two guests, Brittany Romano and Juliana Tafur, and I'll talk to you about them a little bit, but we're talking about belonging, entrepreneurship, and the future that we're testing through a Belonging Accelerator here in Colorado. And so let me tell you a little bit about Brittany, a little bit about Juliana, and then we'll hop right in, and welcome to both of you. Brittany Romano is the executive director of Startup Colorado, where she leads initiatives that expand access to capital, resources, and networks for rural entrepreneurs. With a track record of scaling organizations, building statewide partnerships, and designing accelerator programs, Brittany works at the intersection of economic development, entrepreneurship, and investment. And she's passionate about bridging urban and rural opportunities and creating ecosystems where founders can thrive. Welcome, Brittany. And Juliana Tafur is the inaugural director of the Bridging Differences program at UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. In this role, she's guided Bridging Differences evolution from a small initiative into a robust program, cultivating multi-year partnerships with national foundations to support field building, training, and storytelling on bridging across racial, socioeconomic, ideological, and other divides. A TEDx speaker, creator of Listen Courageously, former Emmy-nominated senior producer and content executive, Juliana brings her creative energy to designing programs and experiences that foster connection. So excited to have you both here. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's ask the first basic question of what is the Belonging Accelerator? What sparked the partnership between Startup Colorado and Belonging Colorado to create it?
Great. Sure. So like you said, Startup Colorado is really about direct to founder, direct to entrepreneur work. So we don't necessarily always work with institutions or programs and then try to fit the founders in them. We try to start with the founders, understand what they're building, see what they need, what barriers they're running into, and understand like what kind of community infrastructure would help them thrive. And so our history, we're going on our 15th year of doing this work. We've had a few different iterations of Startup Colorado. But our reputation is as such, like we're trying to find ways that rural entrepreneurs can succeed. And we end up doing a lot of bridging work kind of organically in this entrepreneurial space. And so Juliana, maybe you can speak more to like the initiation of the Belonging Colorado launch within the Denver Foundation. But I'll wrap up by saying that we were put into contact with Belonging Colorado because of our accelerator framework and because of the work that we do to help entrepreneurs understand that regardless of the product or service that they're selling, they become community institutions and they become mechanisms for increasing inclusivity, belonging and bridging initiatives within their little micro ecosystems. And so we were able to draw some obvious connections and do some bridging work so that this accelerator framework could become a vehicle for enhancing belonging and bridging across Colorado and then hopefully across America in time.
Awesome. Juliana, do you want to expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Brittany, and good to be here. Yes, Belonging Colorado started as a statewide initiative 2 years ago, and it's a multi-year initiative that, in essence, it's bringing Coloradans together across differences to foster a greater sense of belonging. And what we believe is that, Coloradans are truly built for resilience and for showing up for one another. And that coming together to listen, to learn, and to engage in meaningful ways across our differences is the way in which we build a better Colorado for all. And the hope is that we're moving away and from conversations only across differences to actually collaborating around shared interest, around shared goals and challenges, and that we're building connection that way as well on things that matter for all of us. And as you said, I work at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And as implementation partner for Belonging Colorado, we've been training community organizations, leaders across the state, across the sector, as well as upcoming, we're going to be training media on what it means to tell stories of bridging and belonging to foster a Colorado where everyone belongs.
Wonderful. Thank you. One thing before I ask my next question that comes to me is just each of us in the work that we do, there's some form of bridging. There's some form of intersection. It's not like in order, it just feels to me like in order to really make some shift, it's not about sticking in one lane. It's about bridging multiple places, which does bring me to my next question. Is when you use the word belonging, what do you actually mean? And why does it matter so much right now in leadership, in business, and in our community life?
hmm I can jump right in with a little context and definition, and then I'll pass it over to Brittany also. So, for us at the Greater Good Science Center, belonging means being accepted, being valued, truly being included in different spaces while still being safe to kind of be your full self and be able to meaningfully contribute to whatever group that might be. That can be a workplace, that can be school, that can be a community you're a part of, right? The list goes on. So it's both kind of deeply personal and also deeply relational, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about me and how I feel here, but also how the people and the structures and even the culture around me are signaling that I matter here, that I am seen as a whole person here, that I have a voice, that I can help shape this place, that I am a part of it. Um, and that distinction matters because we can't just say you belong here as long as you adapt yourself to fit this room, this space, right? That's not true belonging if someone feels that they need to kind of enter a space while giving something up, right? That it comes at a cost to them. So that's crucial for us. Like, how is it that you can show up without giving your integrity, what matters to you, your identity, in order to be included?
Yeah. And I think that's key. So in my work with the leadership circle, we have below the line, which is more reactive, and above the line, which is more a more creative expression, a more conscious expression. And the word belonging, the way we talk about it, is actually sits in reactive. But what it's meaning for that is that we are giving ourselves away. We're going along to get along. And we describe the creative expression of belonging as that we belong to ourselves first. And we bring our unique, authentic self to the table without needing permission. And that also, though, does mean that we also need systems to bridge with that invite our full creative self in. So I'm curious. That it sounds very similar. We might just see it in different places, and I think it's key. I feel leaders all the time when they've got we call these higher complying scores, and I can feel their energy almost like not grounded in themselves. And when we're grounded in ourselves and presented an environment where it says express your unique place, it creates completely different outcomes.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm
Brittany,
That's
anything to add
beautiful.
on what belonging means to you for
Yeah,
this?
that was really beautiful. I really like the way you framed that, and it just made me think that belonging has so many different. It's applications, it's not really the right word, right? But there's many different layers to it that can be applied in different contexts, and it does land differently, but it ultimately has the same, hopefully it's that same shared outcome, being your presence can change a place, and the contribution that you have matters. And that is very aligned with, businesses, rural businesses. And so Startup Colorado really focuses on rural. But in this accelerator, our focus was not rural, but the ethos of it still remains the same, that when think of your most treasured community or the places you love to frequent, like when people say like, oh, this is where I feel like home.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what is there? What are the constructs that make this place feel like home to you? And if we're going to tie that down, let's just for the sake of the example, like we hone in on a place that feels like home, like in Colorado, let's say Crested Butte or Durango or Grand Junction or any, like you name your favorite little getaway in Colorado. And it's very likely that there are places there that make you feel safe, invited. It just has that felt experience that you matter, and you want to be there. And I think that's really important. And if we bring that back to the businesses or those or organizations, because they're not just businesses, they're nonprofits, they're ecosystem building, they're place building organizations. Belonging can show up in very practical ways. So, but for business, it's really like, who's the customer, who gets invited into the design process of the business, who benefits from the business model, who gets paid, who gets connected. This is my favorite. Who gains the confidence, the visibility, or the access because a business or an organization exists. And that is really like the underlying value of the accelerator, or the power of it. It takes the belonging out of what most people might consider to be abstract and asks these founders, or puts them in a container that creates a little pressure to help them operationalize it. So suddenly belonging is not just a value statement, but it's a core part of their product. It's a core part of their customer experience, the partnerships that they formulate, the way they hire, their revenue model, and then ultimately their impact on their environment or the world, whatever matches their aspiration.
Yeah. Thank you. And what's interesting about this being in Colorado, so I think all three of us live in Colorado, and I'm going to venture to guess that many of our listeners that don't live in Colorado maybe have visited here, probably have heard of Colorado. So it's a well-known place. I've lived here my whole life, and there's something interesting that I want to ask you all. And I don't know, this might be a hypothesis versus having an answer yet, but Colorado appears deeply connected on the surface. We've got these really active lifestyles, pretty conscious culture, this outdoor communities. But underneath, we've got a real issue with loneliness, transience, and surface level relationships. I get calls from people, people that have moved here and they know that I have a community. Could you please connect this person? They're having such a hard time getting to know people. Or from a business perspective, I've had some people say to me, like, I'm having such a hard time building my business, and they live here and have lived here for a while. And so I'm super curious, the uniqueness of Colorado, how we solve, or what our hypothesis is for solving this belonging. Do we think we can solve it on the programming level, or how are we going to go into these deeper cultural patterns of like, it's like a hyper independence, mobility. We don't always have as much relational depth because we have all these surface level things we can connect on. And I'm just curious if there's a hypothesis on this, or if there's something in the design of these businesses that address that.
I feel like that was a two-part question. And Juliana, maybe you
It
want to
was.
tackle the broader hypothesis, and then I can jump in on maybe like what we're encouraging these founders to construct.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the question. And I moved to Colorado 2 years ago. So I've also, been creating belonging in Colorado over the last 2 years, as I've also been finding my own belonging in Colorado. I'm
Yeah.
Boulder based with my family. And it's been a wonderful journey to do both at the same time and to understand that, it does take a minute, right? Like for us, I feel like after a year, we began to really feel a sense of belonging, like we found our people. And it takes intentionality, right? Like it's not every community where you'll feel like you belong. And as someone who builds belonging and disseminates skills for bridging to foster belonging is hugely important to me. And I also really deeply feel when I don't have it.
Yeah.
So sharing all of that to say, you can have the skills, but if the community is not there to meet you and to reciprocate, even when you are putting together gatherings and, opening your house, then it's impossible. Like it's not something that you can build on your own. And for us, it was a journey of exploration and understanding, well, maybe this community isn't as open. And there are other communities. And we did find through one of our son's school an incredible community of like-minded parents who, care deeply about community like we do. So just connecting over that value and feeling that we can be ourselves. This group also happens to be dancers, and it's a more artistic community. And, dancing is something we do as a family, and I do, and it's very important to me. And so just like expressing myself through that embodiment in this group of parent dancers has been an amazing way to find my own belonging in Boulder. So that's just me on a very personal level, but I'll pass it over to you, Brittany, for
Yeah.
the business part of the question.
I love it. And I love your response. And I'm so happy to hear you found that, because we have a similar experience where we found our community through a local school here in Grand Junction. And it is like the greatest feeling in the world when you find your people. I'll add that of all states across America, if any one state was going to figure this out, I think it'd be Colorado. And I think it's for a multitude of factors. One, we work really close with the state of Colorado, primarily with the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And I would recommend that if anyone's really looking to figure out how do we do this at an institutional level, like to pay attention to what they're doing. So I'll talk about the top-down approach that I would like to applaud our statewide leadership on, because I think they do an exceptional job being inclusive and being open-minded to arts and culture, science and tech. It spans the whole continuum of activity. They make Colorado a place where all different types of industries and interested parties can find their place and find support. Colorado has a history of being like a pioneer ecosystem where people who want to come and take risks and chances, like they can do it here, and they'll find other folks who are trying to do the same thing, albeit maybe a different strategy, right? Or a different outcome. So from a top-down approach, I think Colorado really does value this, and also values or understands the importance of the fact that communities are fragmented. People are lonely. Another big one is like our institutional partners are struggling / failing to rebuild trust in a timely manner. And while that's happening, I would also say the state of Colorado is then getting closer to the folks who are boots on the ground, who are closer to the problems, and who are able to test these practical solutions more quickly. So that brings us back down. So then I think Colorado also has this like bottom up desire where people in certain communities, some that Juliana's probably experienced, are like, individuals willing to stand up and host meals in their homes, or communities willing to embrace ideas that are have historically been kind of cosmic, right? Like, I mean, this is not an
Yeah.
easy idea to grasp. And communities, they maybe don't understand it from a logical standpoint, but they understand it from a felt sense. And they think,
Hmm.
well, if I integrate this in the community's messaging or the way we stand up family friendly activities, maybe we'll have more success in creating place value or sense of place. And so people do get it from a felt sense. Maybe, like I said, they just may not understand it from the academic sense that we're kind of talking about it right now. But yeah, so I think act, top down, Colorado's leading the dialogue. Bottom up, Colorado's also doing a great job. Um, I don't know if that answered your question about what thesis
Absolutely.
are we testing,
Yeah.
but
Well, there's a couple of things I'm hearing here. You guys can tell me
yeah,
if I'm hearing right or not. There's a couple of things I heard. One, I heard that there is an intentionality as an individual that we need to cultivate, and so there is some inner work as an individual that we have to cultivate, and we also then need to be met at our community level, which we see efforts being made. I heard something else. I heard the my favorite. I'm also a dancer and getting more into dance. I haven't historically been one, and it's like changed my life from a community perspective. And so the embodiment and the arts and the feminine energy side, and I don't mean being a woman, I mean the feminine energy, combined then with the task or the masculine energy of the steps and the science and the pieces, we need both. And so
absolutely.
I'm hearing both individual to collective, but I'm also hearing these different types of energies. You said the word felt sense, right? That's not something we're going to define in words. We're going to know it when we feel it. And so that's what I'm hearing that we're trying to do. And that's complexity, right? There's so many pieces of that. And so that's why we're doing it right now with businesses, which you've kind of answered, but I want to maybe go a little deeper on it is why explore belonging through entrepreneurship and business models and instead of
Yes.
only a social or community initiative. And I'll say this, my very last podcast that just came out was a beautiful way of exploring this through a new way of looking at homelessness. And so now we're exploring it through entrepreneurship and business models. And so talk to a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Entrepreneurs are natural bridge builders. They tend to see gaps before other people see them. They tend to notice pain points, unmet needs, inefficiencies. They are just at the front lines. And then, so maybe they feel that felt sense to the point, or to your earlier point, but then they are the folks who are willing to build something in response or in the void. Business, especially in smaller, actually not necessarily, I was going to say in smaller communities, but the reality is it's in any size community. Businesses are also one of the few structures that touch people repeatedly. So a good business will create relationships with its customers, its employees, its vendors, the community, and all of its partners. So if belonging is designed into those relationships, then the business can become more than just a transaction, but a repeated invitation into connection, or into whatever it is that the person or the business is the business and the customer are seeking. Um, Again, that's really important in rural communities. In rural places, businesses can serve multiple roles. So, the coffee shop is an interesting one. And if there's time later, I'd love to dig into this. But a coffee shop is a business that could be a meeting place. Your outdoor rec or
Ah,
outfitter might be the community connector. Like you were saying, you're the one who's often putting people together. Childcare or schools might be the reasons parents can work in the community. So really our founders
mhm.
and entrepreneurs, they're not separate, but they often help to shape the opportunity and then ultimately the future. Um, we at Startup Colorado say our founders are the real economic developers. They are the ones driving community development, even if they don't see themselves that way. And many of them don't, but they're always generating new value, new relationships, new momentum. And so this accelerator asks the question, what happens when we give them the tools to integrate belonging into their business model intentionally?
Thanks.
I love
Juliana,
that, Brittany.
yeah.
Yeah. I think this question is really important because people experience belonging or, exclusion through the systems that they move through every day. And on our end of the Belonging Colorado initiative, we get to see a wide range of projects that are rooted in kind of relationships. And for example, we have older adults and teens coming together through cooking, or youth from urban and mountain communities connecting through nature based activities, or multilingual community members working on local challenges. So I'm naming that because the common thread is not just who is participating, but also how they are invited to engage through structures that are put together, right? And spaces that are designed for them to come together. And this takes me to entrepreneurship and kind of business models, and how entrepreneurs and business leaders, if you will, aren't just building companies or products. They are also shaping those social conditions
Yeah.
by making, choices about who gets invited, how people interact, and also what kinds of relationships become possible. So they are also creating, right, by the concepts of the initiatives that they're designing, who feels seen, who feels connected, who is able to participate. Um, so, yeah, just going back to at a time when so many are feeling isolated and divided, more leaders and entrepreneurs understanding that they're not just building organizations, but also helping shape these conditions for connection.
Yeah, I mean, it's so deeply resonant with me. I think I'm an advisor for Bridge Entrepreneurs Network, which is how I know Brittany. And when I saw the Belonging Accelerator announced, there was a part of me that's like, should I apply for this? Like business? Because it's so deeply important. And ultimately, it didn't seem like the right timing for that. But it touched me so deeply because yes, I do my business. I need to feed my children and myself and, the basic things, but I also do this to shift connection, to really shift the collective consciousness to help leaders be happier themselves and leading better communities. So it's so meaningful to me. And I think business can be such a force for good. And so I love that you are doing this. I really love it. And I'm so honored to have you both on to talk about this. I just listened to not every single company in the Belonging Accelerator, and we'll put a link to this, by the way, in the notes. But I listened to about 6 pitches yesterday, and there's some exciting stuff. There's some really exciting ideas that you're supporting, and so as this cohort begins, like what are you most curious to learn, to test, to discover, and what do we think
Yeah.
success would look like by the end of this
Yeah.
accelerator? This is the first one, right?
It's the first one. And this is complex question. So I'll just share, we had over 100 applicants from across the nation apply for 10 spots. And so it's very competitive. So kind of underscores the earlier point that if any state is going to nail this, it's going to be Colorado, just because of the leading edge work that's being done here. Really, about 100 of those companies were great ideas and great founders. And the top 10 to 12 that advanced, top 10 to 20 that advanced were just further along in their idea. They thought about how it would get to market. They thought about how the revenue strategy would be, and its sustainability and growth strategies would be. So we had a task, which was ultimately it was like 6 to 8 companies by the end of this that not only have a theory of impact and a statement on how they're going to be doing bridging and belonging work, but also the business plan that will operationalize that. And so that meant they had to have a revenue model. They had to have a growth strategy. And when you layer that in, that's extremely difficult. Like, because this is
Yeah.
an early concept for so many people. Like, how do you then monetize community rewards or creating connection or taking care of your neighbor? Like, how are they going to not to only just convince people of the value, but then convince them to pay for it? Like, it's a very difficult task. So we found these 10, it's actually, we're about 12 companies. They're moving along the trajectory. The next program, part of the program is a growth challenge. It's a very technical accelerator that's about 13 weeks. The founders will really focus in on what their growth strategy is and what their trajectory looks like. And so at the outset of this, our goal is to find, again, I keep talking numbers, but like 4 to 8 companies that we are going to try and go and find investors to help seed some of their early growth plans to see if these ideas can really gain traction and grow. And that thought is, if we apply resources at the right time, right sized, right time, can we put these founders on a successful track? And so we're gambling that we absolutely will. What I love and what I find most compelling about the cohort is the founders don't just have nice ideas. Their business models, in addition to creating bridging and belonging, are solving real pain points in people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this both and concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Juliana, what makes you excited about this, and what are you hoping to learn from this cohort?
Yeah. I was lucky to also review the applications and comment on them and then meet the group and also equip them with some of the science around bridging and belonging, and did an office hours with them after as well. And I mean, I love how, and I've been a social entrepreneur myself prior to starting the program, the bridging program at the Greater Good Science Center. So I deeply understand what they're going through, and love that this is what they're committing energy and all of their expertise to. And for me, it's been exciting to see how beyond business models and revenue and, pitching for investors and making their ventures successful, they are all extremely interested in creating opportunities for kind of repeated, meaningful connection, right? Where they're not just bringing people together in the same space if they own a coffee shop or and there's creative business models, but that they are also moving the needle on helping people understand one another, collaborate across differences, and oftentimes work towards shared goals. So that's just really exciting to see that they're also moving beyond dialogue to like, how can we solve for problems that matter to us in our communities, or move the needle in who belongs.
Yeah.
So you've got a great cohort, and I'm excited to be seeing it from the sidelines and be able to contribute. But just really exciting to see all of that entrepreneurship energy, as well as the interest to really make an impact and care about this cause.
Yeah. And so I hear this both and of like, we are going to get below the surface. We're going to do some of the deeper work, and we're going to have structural work as well, and have a business model around that and show how the two can go together. That's the hypothesis, right? And have investors investing in something that's both can grow financially and is really good for community and society. I love that. It actually gives me a little bit of chills. So, or maybe a lot of chills. And so I'm really excited about this. And really thankful you've come on. And I know that we've talked about, and I hope we can make this happen when the accelerator is through, is complete, and we have more information that we can come back together. Maybe we can bring one of the members of the cohort, and we can really talk about, okay, back in a couple of months ago, we talked about why we're doing this, why it's important, what we're hoping to learn, and we'll have some answers of what we learned, what went amazing, what we'll do different. But I'm really excited for that as well. And thank you both for coming together and doing this work. The combination of your geniuses together is really exciting. So thank you again for being guests, and thanks for hopefully agreeing to come back and as soon as we're through the accelerator and talk about all the amazing things you found.
Of course. And likewise, thank you for the great work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate you and the space to share more.
For more information, visit insight-cc.com or email us at info@insight-cc.com. We look forward to hearing from you.